chair of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Will it be Tim Hogan? It's going to be Christopher DeMary at the line.
It's a special day here on the iRacing Esports Network. You like V8 Supercars? Good. You like Watkins Glen? Even better, because here on SimSpeed TV, we're presenting round 6 of the Aussie Driver Search official V8 Supercar Series here on iRacing. And it's going to be a fantastic one, as per usual. 32 laps around here, and we got 32 drivers in the server. My name is Reese Gardner. Joining me, Zach Hanlon. Once again, Zach, I'm standing in for regular co-commentator Bo Albert, but I tell you what, I don't think this really needs any introduction.
No, well, this is an absolutely amazing series, and thanks for jumping in with us tonight, Reese. Obviously, I'm not feeling 100% after yesterday, so it's good to have someone as formidable as yourself come in and join me up here. And we do, as you said, have a great grid of 32 cars here this evening. Some good, some big names, and a fantastic configuration of this Watkins Glen circuit, which is going to provide some great racing for us this evening.
Yeah, certainly is. We're using the classic boot layout here tonight. Usually we go for the cup layout here in our V8 Supercar races, but classic boot it is tonight. and it's certainly going to throw a spanner in the works. Lots of slipstreaming, quite a few overtaking opportunities, and we got a track temperature that is particularly high today. 38 degrees Celsius track temperature at the moment in server. So those guys are going to be dealing with some very slippery rear ends.
Yeah, I'd expect to see a few of these guys, especially halfway through the stint, maybe coming to slide up through the S's section up the hill, and always trying to get the power down through the boot and through the heel and toe section. It's just a very fun track to drive, but you really do need to use that throttle and carry that momentum and use it to your advantage. So these guys are going to be in for a tough challenge this evening, but it's definitely going to be fun to watch. And Wayne Burke is the man who's going to take us away from pole position. He's going to line up aside Mr. Two-time Sam Blacklock for position number 2 for Trans-Tasman ratings. Just 1/18,000th of a second separating those guys. So nice pace between them. Jack Boyd and Brett Cananzi will take out positions 3 and 4 on the grid. They'll be joined closely by Corey Preston and Michael Taliancic on row number 3. Haven't seen Michael for a while. Good to see him up there with a strong qualifying performance. Brett Loxton and Luke Harvey will take out row number 4 for us. And Marlon McMullen and Jackson Suslin-Harlow will start from the top 10.
In 11th place, we got Guy Leach, followed by James Scott, Kyle Stokes and Jamie McKnight, along with Mario Vlasic, rounding out the top 15. Brian Borg, Auguste Durac, and Chris Coxhead in the top 18. And the top 20 rounded out by James McKee and Christian Smart in the number 27.
And then we have Zach Baker lining up alongside Greg Sharp for Stealth Simforce Racing there. They're followed up by Damian Johnston and Justin Waller. Behind them, Steve Yanston for CMR Racing, and the big old team boss down at ERT, Brenton O'Brien. He's going to start out of 26th position. Seen him move up through the field recently, so watch out for him throughout this race. Matt Muggleton will start out of 27th position. Luke Page sitting there in 28th with Mitchell McLeod and Jamie Stovall in 30th position there. Mitchell McLeod's definitely going to come moving through the field, and Raymond Stayer and Dino O'Brien will round out this 32-car grid for us this evening. The man at the front of that queue, though, at the moment, Wayne Burke, looking to put in a good performance this evening. And he stares down to turn number 1. The revs start to rise here at Watkins Glen, and they are go, go, go. Good start there from Wayne Burke. Got a nice jump off the line. It's going to be difficult, though. He's got that car there of Sam Blacklock trying around the outside. Blacklock doing a good job keeping that momentum there. Not going to be able to pull it in, though, before the Estes. It just tucks back in there. A couple of cars going 2 by 2 just behind them, as we've got a great shot looking back from Wayne Burke here. And Sam Blacklock already pushing him up the hill. Sam Blacklock wants to take the lead of this race very quickly, as he already gets the bump drive as they come up the hill there. Is he going to pull out as they come down to the first major section of this boot? And he is going to have a little bit of a peak there, but not going to do anything. A couple of cars behind there also showing the nose a little bit, but nothing coming through too heavily. Now, noticed, Reese, on the Friday night race for AOSC, the draft here was not as effective as we thought, so guys might start having to think about the strategy pretty early on in this race.
Yeah, they certainly will. Actually had a bit of a chat with Sam Blacklock before the race, where he told us about what the general strategy is going to be in this one. 60 litres at the stop. It's going to be a small window, but there'll only be one stop. It's really going to count when you take that stop.
Absolutely. We see a couple more cars in the mid-pack there just scrambling for position. Looks like the 21 car there going side by side. There's Corey Preston and Brett Cananzi, so 2 very experienced racers there going side by side. I think that's Michael Taliancic up getting involved in that action as well in the number 6 car. Now Brett Loxton is also in the picture, and some really talented drivers in that little group there. You can also see that ace tennis entry of Luke Harvey lurking just behind Michael Taliancic and Brett Loxton also, and he's definitely capable of doing some damage, is Luke Harvey. So definitely watch out for him. Fanning back there, I think, as they just pull. Harvey's now just going down the inside there.
Oh, no! Oh, goodness me! That is a big crash. Luke Harvey and Michael Taliancic coming together right out of turn 1. Both of them straight into the wall. My goodness, I wasn't expecting to be screaming this early, Zach.
Absolutely not, but they were so lucky that they didn't hit that outside retaining wall so hard, because that would have shot them right back into traffic, and everyone's done a fantastic job of getting through there. We'll just see Luke goes down there and carries himself on the apex, and looks like there could have just been a little bit of net code on the tail end of that there, but as you can see, those guys, they hit that outside retaining wall just enough there that it didn't really cause too much damage to either car, and it looks like they've both continued on. So Michael Taliantic at the moment sitting just behind Mitchell McLeod, so way back in the field, and a lot to do, but Luke Harvey is sitting up behind Jamie McKnight in that Evolution Racing Team car, getting involved in a bit of pack action here, and is still making his way forward. So maybe those guys can recover a bit of what's going on there. But up towards the front of the pack now, we have Corey Preston being overtaken there by Brett Loxton, who's looking very nice in that brand new livery KRF machine there, sponsored by Zuba. Looking very good as he makes his way past the JMSR Commodore of Corey Preston there. And they've also got, I think that's Brett Cananzi just tucked in behind. And he's looking very racy at the moment as well. I've noticed Brett looking to struggle a little bit for rear traction in this car in the qualifying session, which kind of would expect from some of Brett's other driving. But he'll be looking to try and keep that a little more under control tonight. Looking good though at the moment in position number 6, though he has dropped 2 positions from where he started.
Yeah, he certainly has, but still, it's a very good job from everyone in the top 10 to stay, for the most part, out of trouble. They're on lap 3 now, and Wayne Burke and Sam Blacklock have broken away from the rest of the field somewhat. Jack Boyd has absolutely no draft, and Brett Loxton is very rapidly hunting him down there.
Yeah, and we can just see as well, I think that was an ERT machine, just got a bad run out of the S's there. We're looking now with Mario Vlasic and James Scott, and Scott trying to hold it tough around the outside. That'll give him the advantage for the next corner, and he's even just managed to stay ahead. Mario Vlasic maybe thinking about cutting back in under there, but thinking better of it and tucking back under that red machine of James Scott. And probably a good idea at the moment just to make sure that you're able to stay in the draft of the guys up ahead. We will see little duos, I think, probably start to form as we get little packs of guys who are going 2 by 2 and using that draft to kind of carry each other along. But at the moment, there are a lot of cars in the big train at the moment. We're just hearing Evolution Racing Team's Brenton O'Brien is out of this one. Getting a Car Plus Racing replay for you now. He was battling there with Mitchell McLeod, and just got a little bit of a bump, and that's turned him right in front of the CMR car, and a couple of other cars there. The 26 car, I believe, is of Damian Johnston, and the 30 car of Raymond Stayer as well was also involved for TD Racing there. So very unfortunate for the B-Man and a couple of other innocent bystanders there.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate for Brenton as we go back live. Coming through the S's, we're focused once again on Brett Loxton. That incident with Brenton O'Brien, it just kept going, and that is the problem with those early race incidents. At a track like this that has very narrow room, absolutely no room for error here. The walls are pretty close at all times. You need to really be careful that you don't get into or bounce off any of those Armcos. And we're hearing from our director that Loxton was on the limiter, the rev limiter, for a couple of seconds there, so maybe he's geared his car a bit short for this one.
Yeah, that's really, I'd have to say, it's a pretty poor choice of setup there. You definitely don't want to be topping out, especially when using the draft and the big straight here down the back of Watkins Glen is pretty much the best overtaking opportunity you're going to get, unless you pressure one of your opponents into a mistake, which can be very easy to do. Good thing about this Watkins Glen circuit is you can go the outside or the inside and make it work either way, as we now see Chris Coxhead having to decide whether or not to go the inside or the outside on Kyle Stokes, and Kyle Stokes has gone for the inside, but now he's going to have to go round the outside, and this is one of the more difficult corners to go around the outside on. And you can see that Kyle Stokes is actually carried a little less mid-corner speed there, might actually have come under attack from the car behind, but he was able to keep a bit of a groove going through that and carried some nice speed through the exit and Chris Coxhead under a little bit of pressure now, but definitely a place where you can make both lines work and still keep up the pace. And we're just seeing Luke Harvey dive off into the pits there as those two guys were battling as well. And I think there was another ERT car just up ahead that was going for a move. I think that was, Brian Borg and Jamie McKnight side by side as they come through the S's section here. And that's going to go badly for Borg if he's not very careful. He's getting a little bit of a shoulder out there from Jamie McKnight and says, mate, you're not getting by me this place. This is my territory, and takes it well. And Corey Preston once again coming under big pressure from Brett Cananzi, and Cananzi's also got Marlon McMullen in that CMR car tucked up in nice and close as well. And Marlon McMullen's a two-time champion, I believe, in these V8 Supercars, and is not one to be messed with. So they definitely don't want to be playing with fire around here. But the lead has tightened up. These two front cars, Wayne Burke and Sam Blacklock, have started to drop off the pace just slightly, only by a tenth here and a tenth there, but it's really allowed Jack Boyd and Brett Loxton to recover a lot of that deficit that they had from those first few laps. And now we're getting a little bit of a four-car battle for the lead here, and in the back you can see Brett Cananzi still trying to find a way past Corey Preston. He's going to go around the outside if he can, but Marlon McMullen's going to try and go for that inside line if he can get a nice exit. You can see just not quite enough overspeed there. And they're going to just make it through. Oh no, Corey Preston's gone off and off into the dirt there, and we'll have to get a replay for you on that.
Yeah.
Because that was very, very close racing there. I didn't actually see if they touched there or not.
They did. They definitely touched there. That was Cananzi into the rear quarter of Preston, coming into the kink. You'll see it on the replay now here, presented by CPR Kart Parts. Cananzi just trying to go for that inside line, but Preston was following his usual line, and almost around he went. Well held by Mr. Preston, though. He's gonna have a bit of work to do now.
Yeah, that is very unfortunate for Corey Preston. Brett Cananzi was getting rather impatient there, and having a look now at the lead because it is starting to get on. I would like to say, though, nice save from Corey Preston there. That was a very nice amount of angle he had going on that car, and he'll continue on. But Wayne Burke is continuing to come under pressure from Sam Blacklock. Jack Boyd and Brett Loxton have actually changed positions as well, so that lead has come out a little bit for the two cars up ahead. Oh, big accident! Oh my goodness, just as we had the static cam going there. And I think that's Guy Leach who just got hip and shouldered massively. I was totally glancing at what happened there. But yeah, that was a couple of cars involved there. So Corey Preston definitely involved. And let's see here, so they were going side by side with Guy Leach and Corey Preston. And yeah, I mean, guys, we can probably just go in a straight line though.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to, fall into the trap of starting to move over to the left there, because, obviously that's the racing line, but when you're side by side with someone, you do want to try and ease that just a little bit.
And
I don't know who was at fault there.
Well, I think it comes down to what kind of setups people have, and I think people need to remember as well is that we're not in real life, and it's a lot more difficult to, in some cases, if you don't have 3 screens or if you don't have the ability to look over to your side, it can be really difficult to judge the trajectory of your opponent. And in real life, you can gauge that a lot better just by kind of looking over to the left, which we don't really have the luxury of. So better to play the safer line, and unfortunately those guys have just found out what happens when you don't do that. But Sam Blacklock is continuing to apply massive amounts of pressure to Wayne Burke, who's looking good in that OPR car, new signing for One Performance Racing, and a good signing they have made with Wayne Burke, an absolutely fantastic driver, one I've said could definitely win one of these iRacing official V8 Supercars championships. And with the addition of Aussie Driver Search as a title sponsor on this series, now could not be a better time for Wayne Burke, and he's doing a great job. But Sam Blacklock really constantly applying that pressure, Reese, and Brett Loxton and Jack Boyd have made their way back up onto these guys, and we've still got a long way to go in this race.
Yeah, certainly. The drafters managed to help these guys out somewhat. But you saw with Blacklock, it helps you to get up to the back of a car, but it doesn't really help you to pass them, because that carousel is not really the best overtaking opportunity. You stand the best chance of passing someone into places like turn 1 and all through the boot. Those are the places where you can really put a move on someone. So it's up to Wayne Burke to keep looking in his mirrors along those sections of the circuit. They come around to start lap 8. By the time they complete this, they will have done a quarter race distance. And Brett Loxton, all over the back of Sam Blacklock into turn 1. Blacklock actually falling off Burke slightly. That's interesting, but we'll see what happens when they get to the end of this straight. They come up through the S's once again. Fantastic bit of racetrack, very dangerous bit of racetrack as well.
Extremely dangerous.
Yes, indeed. Blacklock, though, in the draft and continuing to stay in touch with Loxton. You see cloud cover fall over the circuit there. iRacing's new dynamic weather and time of day transitions at work there. Fantastic stuff. And Wayne Burke managing to hold off Sam Blacklock for at least one more corner. Jack Boyd's actually starting to drop off from these guys.
Yeah, he is just marginally. He's actually still lapping at the same pace that Blacklock and Burke are. It's just that he's losing a lot to Loxton, who's actually considerably faster than everybody else right now. Does have to be said, though, I think Sam Blacklock is conserving a little bit at the moment now that he's not directly behind Wayne Burke. Does seem to just be rolling out of the throttle a little bit as we now see Mario Vlasic in a battle with the Evolution Racing car of James Scott there, and having a little bit of a peek, deciding not to commit to a move there, thinking about it somewhere else. He's got some good traction here. Does Mario Vlasic just going to fire it down the inside with two corners?
There we go.
A little bit of contact there. So, and the two ERT cars almost get a little bit, they almost rub panels.
Good avoidance by Jamie McKnight, actually. That was quite impressive to see, but that is a shame. I mean, Vlasic, obviously, within his rights to throw a move up the inside there, but unfortunately, the line through that turn is very difficult to determine. So I think that's where those guys, unfortunately, came unstuck. James Scott's got more work to do now. Not only that, he's got Brian Borg and a battling James McKee and Chris Coxhead right behind him.
Yeah, as Chris Coxhead makes that move stick, and he'll get a nice run all the way up the hill as well. He's just past James Mackey there, who's unfortunately going to get left a little bit out to dry on that run. Lost a lot of speed in the mid corner there. As Brian Borg, coming up on James Scott now, who's carrying a little bit of damage to that ERT machine after that contact with Mario Vlasic, and we can see Borg. Oh no! Again, my goodness! Oh, a bit of a squeeze there, and Brian Borg just manages to push his way through. He was topping out. So we've seen a few cars now starting to top out as they come down that main straight. And now Chris Coxhead might think about having a bit of a move here. So not been a good lap for James Scott. Not been a good lap and a half. And he's coming under some massive pressure. And also looking to get on the attack on Brian Borg as well. Almost pushing Borg up through the right-hander. And he's got a bit of a run here. Don't know if he's going to be able to do anything with it. Brian Borg was pretty aggressive with him, so he might be thinking about returning the favour. He is running very closely to the back of that machine of Brian Borg, but not quite able to make anything work. So Borgie's now got to get a bit of a move on up so that the other ERT machine is in a bit of a sandwich now, and get a bit of a move on so that he can start making progress on Mario Vlasic, because that gap is going to start becoming too great if he doesn't move ahead now.
Yeah, that's right, and he isn't going to have the benefit of draft at the front of that pack. Unfortunately, will Brian Borg or James Scott if he can get past. So these guys may have to work together, may have to look at taking their pit stop early in the window to try and get some sort of undercut advantage. Jeremy McKnight and Mario Vlasic were all on their lonesome there, and unfortunately that's the way it's going to be for now. Back up the front, meanwhile, the battle is still raging on. The top three are within a fraction of a second of each other. Sam Blacklock still pressuring Wayne Burke, and Loxton still pressuring Blacklock. These guys have not stopped, but it's a very simmering rather than boiling battle. These guys are obviously waiting until after the pit stops to really start fighting for these positions.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm debating whether or not that is the case. Wayne Burke, I think, at the head of this train is pushing pretty hard. I think he's just trying to keep his tyre wear under control and keep up a good pace. Sam Blacklock has definitely been conserving it. It seems that he gets pretty tight back up on Wayne towards the end of the lap, but then kind of lets him go as they come down into turn one, so that he can recuperate a lot of that space in the draft and save some fuel as he's coming up through that section of the track. So he's actually seems to be cruising a bit, and Brett Loxton is also gaining in other places, but is starting to catch Blacklock to the point where I think Blacklock's going to have to start not worrying about conserving as much and just sticking on Wayne Burke as much as he can. Otherwise, I feel like Brett Loxton might have a little bit of a go if he gets a sniff. So Sam Blacklock's going to have to be careful, but yeah, these guys, it's a bit of a mind game with this top three at the moment. They are just keeping that gap back to Jack Boyd pretty steady and constant there, and but Marlon McMullen is actually starting to catch all of them too. So, and Brett Canans is the fastest car on track right now. So, still, I'd say at least 6 cars in this battle for the lead at the moment.
Yep, that could definitely all turn on its head when we get to the pit stop phase of the race. So we'll be definitely keeping an eye out on all of these guys within the top 6. Of course, Watkins Glen being Watkins Glen, we've seen plenty of races here in the past. It's been one of the marquee events on iRacing V8 Supercar calendars. So anything we know can happen at a place like this. It's all about keeping the pressure up and making sure that you don't crack under your own pressure.
That's exactly right, and it is very easy to make a mistake around here. You can see those oddly coloured pieces of tarmac on the ground. You'll see another one as we come into this this corner here on the inside. As there it is there, just kind of runs across. There's actually different grip levels across the track there, and the car reacts very differently over both pieces of the surface. So really thinking about where you place your car around this track is quite critical, and it's just another one of those added things that you need to think about when you're going around here, and just something that can lead you to another mistake. But all these guys are doing a really nice job at the moment of keeping the car in that groove and keeping the momentum up, and you can see where those racing lines are starting to form as well, all over those pieces of different coloured tarmac, because they do provide an amazing amount of grip. And you can see there Brett Loxton just pulling out and having a bit of a look and assessing the situation. And these guys are all pretty close right now. You'll see how close Brett Loxton gets and how close Sam Blacklock gets to Wayne Burke by the time they get to the end of this straight. So right now we're on board with Brett Loxton, who's just dancing the car over the top of that hill there. And you'll just see how much he starts to reclaim in now, because Sam Blacklock is actually off the throttle at the moment slightly. He's just starting to conserve a bit of fuel, and that's what I said. If Brett Loxton gets a sniff, he's going to go for it, and go for it. He does, and he's got the inside line here. And I reckon if he's willing to brake deep enough, he's going to be able to take Sam around the outside. But he doesn't go late enough on the brakes, or does he? He's going to keep the car in there. But Sam Blacklock has enough room. He can come back across the track and cover that off. But that's what I was talking about earlier with Sam having to watch out about how much he's conserving, because Brett Loxton doesn't really seem like he's too willing to wait around. And now Jack Boyd, Marlon McMullen, and Brett Cananzi are all very much in this picture.
They certainly are, and you can see even here, Sam Blacklock trying his best to conserve a bit of fuel and falling victim to Loxton's advances. And this is giving a free kick to Wayne Burke in this battle. Tell you what, I'm interested to see what will happen at the entrance to Carousel on the next lap, because Blacklock, he may... Oh, goodness me, that's Brian Borg there with issues in the Premier Esports Racing Team machine. Of course, a new team of his. He has departed Cross Continental Motorsports. We're going to take a look at what happened here on this CPR Kart Parts replay. Looks like it's happened down at the heel of the boot. Brian Borg running a little bit wide, it seems, and just lost it on his own. That looks like a pretty bizarre incident.
That's what I was talking about with those changes in track surface. You notice as soon as he came off the grippy cement there, and he got onto the kind of slicker tarmac just out of that corner there. The rears just started to spin up. He got a little bit of opposite lock there and maybe just corrected too heavily, and they're fanning out into turn one again, guys. What is going on? Brett Loxton really wants to get by and into this race lead, and everyone's covering it off as they see it coming. And Wayne Burke, I mean, he's definitely getting an advantage out of these two guys battling, but if you're in the lead of this race and you got those two cars that close behind you and they're fighting, I'd probably be thinking, are these guys going to come together and are they going to take me with them? So I don't think Wayne Burke is going to be he's not going to be feeling 100% safe right now, but if he can keep himself calm and just run his own race, it will help him for the coming stint. And we can see now Brett Loxton is super close. He's just getting closer and closer and closer. But so is Jack Boyd, who admittedly hasn't had the pace for a lot of this race, but has still been hanging in there well enough. And Marlon McMullen and Brett Cananzi, who are two guys who have had good pace through this race as well. In fact, Brett Cananzi has the third fastest lap of the race. So he's definitely got some pace up his belt. And going to start getting very interesting. We're expecting these guys to start pitting, I would say, from next lap and beyond, or possibly even this lap and beyond. We can probably start expecting pit stops. And just having a look at the track temperature, it's been ebbing and flowing quite a bit. We've seen the track temperature as low as 36 degrees. It's back up to 41 degrees at the moment. So it's going to be interesting to see how these guys feel about tires and about the track temp, if they think it's going to come down or up, and how they decide to take their tires here, because especially as Blacklock now going for the inside and takes the race lead.
Righto.
It's not quite actually. It's not over.
Careful, boys.
For him, and yeah, a little bit of a slide there from Blacklock as he gets back on the power, and now Loxton's going to have a look. We can turn around and see, oh, there he is, Mr. Sam Blacklock, Mr. Two-Time, and Brett Loxton darting to the outside of the track. Nice move there, and just managing to hold on, but then you see as soon as he gets off that tarmac there, not able to keep it up, but there's been a moment for Wayne Burke just coming out of that corner, a little bit oversteer, and now it's a little bit of a drag race between Loxton and Blacklock as they come into the hairpin. Comes back across the track, but these guys are professionals. They're keeping it cool and putting on a great show. Jack Boyd just jumping on the brakes a little bit to keep out of trouble and keep himself in the main race as it stands, because these guys are going off right now, and they're not careful. One of these two guys behind them could easily run away with this.
My heart is stopping. My heart is stopping. It stopped. Take me to the hospital. Take me to the hospital. Call 000. My goodness, someone call a paramedic. I'm dead, man. Goodness me. That is the incident of the race. Right there, in the middle of the last corner. Sam Blacklock taken out of the race in spectacular fashion.
Well, that was a move there from Brett Loxton. Late on the brakes and a bump on the curb and a bump into Blacklock, who is going to need a paramedic, as well as Reese up in the commentary booth here. It's very unfortunate to see, ladies and gentlemen, and that has taken out one of the contenders of this race. I feel like there should be another one, because I could have sworn we had 6. Marlon McMullen, while all that was happening, has decided to come in the pits. He's thought that might ruffle the feathers of enough people that puts them out of their zone, and he's got a nice bit of track there, and it looks like Jack Boyd managed to get past Brett Loxton and all of that as well. So coming back through is Brett Loxton. But yeah, if these guys continue battling, this could work out extremely well for Marlon McMullen. He's got a nice dry bit of track in front of him also, so he's got plenty of room to work with, and he's not going to get held up by any traffic. So he's been the first to bite the bullet. We'll see what these guys decide to do. Wayne Burke now in a very good position. Brett Loxton has a lot of work to do to recover that gap, and he's currently trying to fight tooth and nail with Jack Boyd, and that's not going to help their battle at all. Surely one of these guys will decide to pit now. It would be almost silly not to, surely. And
Yeah,
Brett Cananzi is the man with some sense. So Brett slides his way into the pit lane. A great stint from him, being able to keep so close to the lead of that race. And he will now come in, take some fresh Dunlops, and start on the second stint of his race. Just having a look at where Mr. Marlon McMullen is currently at the moment, just about to come through the penultimate corner. So gonna be pretty tight between him and Cananzi. He had track position prior to that transaction, so be interesting to see if he does come out. I imagine with the undercut we have seen previously in this series, that would be the case, but the track temp has risen by 2 degrees since Marlon has been out on this lap.
Cananzi's just gone.
Yeah, he's just gone now. So just having a look at the pit stop times there, Cananzi was a little bit longer, about 1.5 seconds longer, but looks like that's translated a little more so in the favor of Marlon McMullen with that undercut there and the fresh rubber. So nice job from him. And now these two guys ahead, Jack Boyd and Brett Loxton and Wayne Burke, they're going to have to respond, but I feel like they only have a certain amount of laps that they're going to be able to run. I think Marlon McMullen is actually saving some fuel already, so he might have actually come in just a touch earlier than the fuel window required, and is going to have to do a little bit of conservation throughout this stint. So we'll see now as Brett Loxton and Jack Boyd come through, as does Wayne Burke. Will any of them decide to pit? He's got a clean pit lane, does Wayne Burke, as do all three of them decide to come into the pits now. So I think the man to watch now is Marlon McMullen. He's the one who could really steal this away from everyone. Gonna have to have done something pretty special to make up that deficit to Wayne Burke, but definitely not out of the realms of impossibility for the CMR driver and previous series champion. If there's a man that can do it, he's definitely one you would put your name in a hat for. A little bit of understeer as he comes through that left-hander there, carrying a good amount of momentum and looking very smooth on the throttle application. With 43-degree track temp, you'd expect that he'd have to be that way. So he's coming over the start-finish line now, and our race leader, Wayne Burke, is still on the jacks, and I think Marlon's going to go through. So yeah. Marlon McMullen has done an absolutely fantastic job of getting in early. And sure, he's got 2 laps on these tyres already, but he's got a lead of at least 1.3 seconds right now, which means Wayne Burke is actually going to have to push a little bit to get back into that slipstream and then pass the CMR driver. So great strategy play by Marlon McMullen. And I feel that he is going to have to do a little bit of conserving and doesn't probably have the gap that he would like if he has to do that.
Yeah, that's the thing. We can say that it's a fantastic strategy play from McMullen, but we'll only know for sure when we get to the final laps of this race, because I saw almost riding on board with him coming into the carousel. He was right on the clutch in the braking zone, taking those engine revs down, making sure that he doesn't use a single milliliter more of fuel than he needs to. In the midst of all of that, I notice Cananzi managed to jump Loxton and Boyd in all of that. Plus, Burke actually had one of the best pit stops out of all of those guys. I would expect Burke to be saving a bit of fuel as well, considering the gap that he has just gotten out of the stops.
Yeah, well, I mean, at least according to my timing, Wayne Burke, Brett Cananzi, and Marlon McMullen were all within about 0.4 of a second each other on the actual stop time itself. So I think that those guys have probably taken a little bit less fuel possibly than Loxton and Boyd, because Loxton and Boyd went in for about an extra second longer than those three. So definitely a little bit of saving possibly to be done by some of the drivers up ahead, but Marlon McMullen, he was about the same on the stop times as Wayne Burke and Brett Cananzi also. So he's got the same amount of fuel in theory then as Wayne Burke, but he's just been on it for 2 laps less, which is going to be interesting for him. And we can see already that Wayne Burke is back in that slipstream and has already closed the gap up by 0.7 of a second as it stands. So very, very good progress there for Wayne Burke. Helped probably by the fact that the track temp has come down so dramatically as well.
Cananzi versus Loxton. Sorry to cut into you there, Zach. These guys running side by side, almost making contact through the ankle of the boot. That is some pretty intense racing at the moment. And this, I think, is where the fuel saving that Cananzi is doing came into play, because Loxton went up the inside of him at the carousel, something that is most easily done when the guy in front of you lifts off early. So now Cananzi is right in the middle of that pack, Loxton in front and Boyd behind, and Cananzi struggling with the wheel of that car as he tries his best to maintain some momentum. Of course, Loxton and Boyd, we pretty much know by now they've got nothing to lose at the moment. They've got the fuel that they need to make it to the end, as it is now on for the lead between the number 1 and the number 4. Marlon McMullen is facing some pretty intense pressure here from Wayne Burke. You can see there's even a slipstream down the front straight, and Burke pulling out, having a bit of a look into turn 1, letting McMullen know that he's there, and McMullen actually overshooting turn 1 slightly. This could be problematic for Mr. McMullen, and he's getting all over the curbs right there.
I think it's going to be problematic for both of them, really, because Wayne Burke probably would have liked to have had a little bit more of a run and not have to sacrifice the time there. And McMullen's actually willing to do a little bit of defensive work here, so he's not going to let it go easy as he pulls to the inside there, places his car right in the middle of the track there, and will take the inside line. Wayne Burke holding it very strong around the outside. He's going to have the inside line for the next corner, and that will be the move done, I feel, for Wayne Burke. Although doing a good job is McMullen, holding that high line. Just doesn't have the momentum, though, to keep it. He's locked it up! Oh my goodness, that was very tense. Yeah, that was very close.
Yeah, locked it up in the middle of the corner, and that particular turn is one that you need to make sure you maintain momentum through, because if you make a single mistake through that turn, all of your momentum is lost, and the time loss is immense. I mean, that's something that happens at almost any corner on this track, but at that one in particular, so Burke will have to be careful there.
Yeah, you can at least lose 0.3 of a second sometimes if you manage to just get a bit of a hiccup through there. But again, as we've said, at Watkins Glen, there are so many different lines that you can take through there. As an example, I noticed every time I race there, I seem to have a different line to everyone who appears to be in front of me. So, you know, everyone has their own preferred line through there, and those guys definitely, it seems like a lot of guys really have found a particular groove. A lot of people enjoying the same lines through these corners this evening, which is probably played into the fact that this race is so close at the moment between so many of the guys. We've got a group of 3 cars here, you can see, which is headed by Kyle Stokes. He's got Chris Coxhead, and he's controlling Chris Coxhead in an ERT sandwich, of which the other piece of bread is Jamie McKnight, and those guys are just plodding along nicely there. Mitchell McLeod, who's the biggest mover of the race so far, who's up 18 positions, is Mr. Mitchell McLeod. He's heading a train which consists of James Scott, Brian Borg, Christian Smart, and James Mackey as well. And obviously we have the 2 battle packs for the 2 leading groups as well. So a lot of guys using this similar lines and keeping in the toes of each other throughout this race has really kept that pack racing, as we said earlier on in the broadcast, we expected to see. And now...
Oh, goodness me. Sorry, Zach. I just saw a big oversteer moment from Kyle Stokes out of that turn. Doesn't seem to have harmed his momentum all that much, but I get the feeling that Chris Coxhead is now smelling blood.
Yeah, and he's using a little bit of rear tire himself, is Chris Coxhead, as they come out of that hairpin there. But, I mean, it's kind of expected these guys are going to be having a fair amount of trouble getting the power down nice and smoothly. these V8 Supercars are incredibly difficult to drive, and we're seeing track temperatures in the high 30s and even low 40s at some points. Right now it's 39 degrees, and even in a GT car with traction control or cars that have downforce, it can still be very difficult to get the traction down in hotter weather, and especially around a slippery circuit like Watkins Glen. These guys are trying to get that all done with virtually no aero, no traction control. They've got a lock differential, which is pretty much the hardest thing that you could possibly drive to try and get power down smoothly and get the car turned. So the fact that these guys are able to drive the cars so smoothly for such a long period of time is a true testament to their driving skill, as we just see Chris Coxhead just conserving a little bit of fuel now as he's maintaining his position behind Kyle Stokes in that ERT machine, just waiting maybe for a little bit of a mistake here, and we can see Kyle Stokes just getting a little bit loose as he was coming down into the boot section here and looking to struggle a little bit for grip. He's got a lot of teammates in this race, so you would hope that they've done a bit of testing, but obviously ERT also putting quite a bit of their efforts into their Daytona effort, where they had, I think it was probably the closest finish of the entire top split race in the DP category. I think they came home by a couple of hundredths of a second for fourth place from Ethan Grigol. Very nice job from the entire team down there. But Chris Coxhead going for a lunge into the second last corner there, and he's going to have to carry a little bit of oversteer out of there. A little bit exuberant in his efforts to try and get past that machine of Kyle Stokes, and now he's got the other ERT machine car of Jamie McKnight applying some opposite pressure to Chris Coxhead, trying to break him off of his teammate there.
Yes, indeed. And Coxhead actually going for the move here at turn one, and he might just be able to get it done if Kyle Stokes yields on the outside. They're going to go side by side coming into the S's, but Stokes, I think, very rightly yields there. He's going to have another chance to come back at him at the end of the straight. So, hang on a minute.
His teammate, Jamie McKnight.
Yeah, that's interesting. Stokes actually letting McKnight through there. I think they might be changing tactics there at Evolution Racing Team, thinking McKnight, well, maybe he's the faster one. Maybe he should have a go at getting past Coxhead. Maybe Stokes can follow him through.
Yeah, I think they could have done that a little more efficiently there, but that is the way it went. And now Jamie McKnight has free rein to try and make his way past Chris Coxhead, and hopefully, for the sake of his teammate Kyle Stokes, open up a bit of an opportunity for himself as well. And already closing the gap is Jamie McKnight. He had been sitting behind Chris Coxhead for a while. That being said, Chris Coxhead has had an almighty draft from Kyle Stokes' ERT machine, and already applying the pressure and going down the inside is Jamie McKnight. Gets on the brakes a little bit more towards the end of that braking zone there, just to pull it up and allow Chris back onto the normal racing line, but still staying in the mirrors and almost giving a little bit of a howdy budge to him as they come through and into the penultimate corner now. Very nice turn in there from both cars, all tracking out as wide as they could possibly go. Chris Coxhead feeling pretty brave on the entry as well, almost clipping the grass there as the ERT cars behind just a tiny bit more conservative, but you can see how that's allowed Chris Coxhead just to open out a little bit of a margin, and that'll give him a bit of a safety barrier into turn one. But I suspect now that this is where we'll see a bit of draft come into play, because Jamie McKnight's car has looked pretty fast in the straight line, I think, and he's got enough of a gap here where a massive overrun towards the end of this straight could really propel him quite fast past Chris Coxhead. So we'll see how it goes. He's gaining, and it's just a little bit too much of a gap for the Evolution Racing Team car at the moment to make anything happen.
Yeah, a little bit too far back. Oh, and a little bit of an oversteer moment on exit, just for good measure from McKnight. But you can tell that the pressure's definitely on for that position. Those guys are fighting for 8th and 9th position there. We go back to Marlon McMullen, the likes of Brett Loxton and Jack Boyd. And I tell you one thing, we were talking about saving fuel and driving conservatively. Talking of which, Brett Cananzi has been absolutely dropped by these guys. Look at how far back he is.
Yeah, he's lost like 3.5 seconds off the back of Jack Boyd. So it does seem that Brett is saving a lot of fuel. If he is continuing to fuel save at the moment, could just be that he's lost some of the pace out of that car. He's we have seen throughout this series, he has been very strong in the opening parts of the race and has, from time to time, just dropped off in the second half, the second stints of the race. So we'll see if he can. Maybe he's conserving the tyre a little bit for when the track cools down and he can really have a go at it. We'll have to wait and see. But there are a couple of other battles which have started to make themselves come about. One we're looking at right now is Luke Page, Steve Jansen, and Matt Muggleton, who are all the way down in 21st, 22nd, and 23rd right now, but still having a great battle. And after 45 minutes of racing, is still only 35 seconds off the lead. It's pretty good pace between the entire field. I mean, these guys are pretty much the last guys on the lead lap that don't appear to have had an issue or anything. And they're only 35 seconds off the lead after 45 minutes. So that's actually an incredible effort from the entire field. Just goes to show how close all of these drivers are in pace. And just having a little bit of a look, there is Matt Muggleton in that DFR entry. And Steve Jansen would usually be a little more up the field than this, and I'm sure he would like to be. But such is the pace of everyone at the moment. It's been very difficult. Corey Preston is the only real, other than drivers we've had we've seen incidents with tonight. Corey Preston has been in the wars a bit, but he has lost the most positions of anyone who is currently still circulating the track. So been a tough night for Corey Preston, but we are seeing a couple of cars now just forming into the little 2x2 or 3x3 paddle packs there. And this battle with McKnight has just gone to a different level because Chris Coxhead has had to give up that position, and looks like that was a good decision then by ERT. Although he's had a bit of oversteer. Yeah, I think he might have come across the track for some oversteer coming out of the exit there, but he's had to cover off, and he might have even been positioning his teammate Carl Stokes for a bit of a passing maneuver here as well, as he is just starting to set up this draft for his teammate, I feel, and he's done a great job. He's kind of boxed Chris Coxhead up in a bit where he's had to check up just enough where Carl Stokes might be able to actually make something work here. They're halfway down the straight and he's closing, but Chris Coxhead also has that draft and is not going to be able to do anything with it. It does force McKnight onto a defensive line. That's also opening up the possibility for Carl Stokes to have a bit of a look as they're starting to come down into the boot section now.
Yes, indeed. These guys are very close at the moment. All three in very close quarters. Jamie McKnight still holding his own at the lead of this one as they go through the toe of the Watkins Glen boot, and he's taken that narrow exit, which it seems to work for him. But Coxhead still under immense pressure here from Carl Stokes, and he's going for a big move here as Carl Stokes. I think that might have been a mistake from Mr. Stokes there. Actually, quite a bit of oversteer, losing the rear end. That might have been a rear lockup. It's really put him on the back foot here. And look who is looming behind these guys. It's Mitchell McLeod. He is definitely en route for the Hard Charger Award in this one.
Without a doubt. I mean, we said earlier on in this broadcast that he was definitely one to watch out for. And actually looking at it, he's stolen away. I think he's got the second fastest lap of the race, possibly. So he's been silently creeping up, or actually third. Corey Preston actually got a stonker in earlier in the race, but he's nonetheless, Mitchell McLeod, been moving up through this field at an absolutely astonishing rate. And we apologise to Mr. McLeod that we haven't seen more of him, because he's now just knocking on the door of a top 10. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, this man started this race in, I believe, 29th position. So an incredible feat so far. And of course, we have had a couple of cars through attrition, but it is definitely not close to the 18 cars that he has managed to pass throughout this race so far, and he is currently catching these guys at the rate of about 2 to 4 tenths of a second a lap, give or take. Although Jamie McKnight has started to pick up the pace a little bit. You can see that Torque Inc machine just menacingly catching this little group now, as we just see James Scott there going through on Christian Smart. As he moves out of the way and allows the ERT machine through there. So that's a position good for James Scott, and Christian Smart having another look there, but not quite close enough to make anything work. And Jamie McKnight's really starting to pull away from Chris Coxhead already. I was not really expecting him to have that much pace compared to the two guys behind him.
Yeah, that's astounding how much of a gap he's pulled already. I think McKnight might have been saving up a bit of pace in reserve over the course of this one, and just now unleashing it in these dying laps of the race. They're just coming around to start lap 27 out of 32, these guys, so it's in these late stages where you do want to do what Jamie McKnight is doing right now, and that is extracting the maximum out of your car, making sure that it is right under you, and that is a car stopped by the side of the circuit. That's Brenton O'Brien.
Yeah, Brenton might have... maybe he came back out on the track and has decided that the car's actually not as drivable as he thought, or maybe he's just waiting for a gap in the traffic and just wants to go out and possibly get a little bit of safety rating. Good to see that he's committed to not involving himself in anybody else's race. Very smart and considerate driving there from the big man at ERT. As we see an ERT machine on the track at the moment, as we're on board with Christian Smart, looking at the ERT machine of James Scott, who's had an interesting race. He's been up and he's been down, but in the end, he's ended up right where he started. But Christian Smart still looking good to possibly take that back away from him. These guys have been battling the last couple of laps. James Scott just got through on the lap prior, as we just see.
Oh, hello.
That's Brian Borg fanning out there with James Mackey, who's going down the inside, and they're going to meet in the middle there. Not quite. Nicely done from both drivers there. Nice amount of racing room. James Mackey's going to struggle on the outside line there, and looks to turn in and sees that Premier racing car in the way and has to bail out of it. So Brian Borg getting another position in that Premier Esports Racing Team car, and he's been in the wars a bit as well this race, but still up 2 positions. And Christian Smart's actually up a decent amount of positions as well. He's up 7, so looking to put another one on James Scott. And Mitchell McLeod is definitely touching on the draft door of Kyle Stokes now. I think he is probably just getting the draft now, and is starting to close in on these guys. 149.6 for Mitch McLeod last time, 149.9 for Kyle Stokes, and a 49.7 for Chris Coxhead. So just starting to scrape away that gap. He's only got 5 laps to get something done though, so got a couple of positions there I think he can maybe take away, but he's going to have to work hard for him.
Yeah, certainly will, but Mitch McLeod is no stranger to having to race hard. Of course, he was a champion of this series back in the early days, so he knows his way around these cars. Unfortunately, not the best demonstration of his driving ability there, bit of oversteer in the middle of the toe of the boot, and it looked like Kyle Stokes just overcooked it a bit there as well. So these guys definitely shaping up for an intense battle in the last couple of laps of this one. Chris Coxhead hasn't been able to make any inroads on Jamie McKnight up ahead of them, so it'll be up to these guys just to preserve their cars until the end, not make any mistakes. That is the name of the game here. But behind them, James Scott and Christian Smart are showing no signs of doing any of that. They're still battling very hard.
Yeah, they absolutely are. And something else that's just popped up on my radar as well, as we'll just watch these guys continue to battle. But Marlon McMullen and Brett Loxton are very close to one another. The gap was massive earlier on in the stint, but the gap between those two guys has come down to 0.95 of a second at the moment, and within the tow. Will Brett Loxton be within? I mean, he's in the tow now, as far as I'm concerned. So he's possibly going to be able to get back onto the rear of that CMR machine of Marlon McMullen and do some damage. But we will have to see. And so the final position on this podium, not fully decided yet, does have to keep up his consistency. Does Brett Loxton, if he's going to want to have a shot at taking that position away? Only got 4 laps to do it. Meanwhile, though, Christian Smart looking to the outside on James Scott, and
late apex.
Gets a great apex, late apex, but just gets a bit too intense on the exit of that corner there, and kills a lot of his exit momentum by just having to correct that oversteer, which is very unfortunate for him. But he is looking for. He is exploring the track and finding out what's good and what's not. And, you only need to get past once and not let them pass again to make it work. And he's only going to have a couple of laps left in this race to get the move done. And if he does, he's not going to have long that he needs to defend that position. So good time to make a move for Christian Smart. But at the front now, we will take you to this battle for the final podium position, because Brett Loxton has just been smashing it lap after lap, trying to catch back up to Marlon McMullen, and he has successfully done so. Now, most definitely in the slipstream, as you can see, just edging more closer to the back of that car.
McMullen with a big fuel save there. He clutched it hard going into the braking zone for the carousel. He's getting desperate.
But he does have a big zone that he's able to defend it. So if he only needs to fuel save on that one bit of track, and he can place his car correctly for the next 3 laps, he might be okay. But the overspeed that we have seen that is capable of Brett Loxton is it's quite punishing, as Sam Blacklock saw earlier in the race, where Loxton was able to dive up the inside quite dramatically. And could happen to McMullen if he doesn't keep his eyes on his mirrors, and probably on the fuel gauge as well, because it would definitely not be uncharacteristic of someone to run out of fuel just as they're coming over the line in one of these iRacing V8 Supercar Official Series races. It's something that we've almost see week to week. Could be from anywhere from 3rd position to 21st position, but someone usually manages to do it. And today could just be that day for Marlon McMullen. So we'll have to wait and see. But we're just watching now Mitchell McLeod, who has gotten himself very close now to Kyle Stokes and Chris Coxhead, and is going to start using the experience of all of his years in sim racing to try and get past these guys as efficiently as possible with only 2 laps to go. And hate to tell you, Mitch, one tip that I would have is trying not to carry too much oversteer on your exit would be an efficient way of trying to overtake these guys. But you're probably in the cockpit and have a bit of a hot head right now, so we'll let you sit on that one for a bit. Not helping him though, as they come through turn 1, and Dean O'Brien, One Performance Racing, he came in a little too early. So he's been out on that stint for 14 laps, and unfortunately wasn't able to hit his fuel number. So coming back in, he is for a little splash and dash to the run. Brett Loxton now 0.2 of a second behind Marlon McMullen with 2 laps to go. And it's not even 2 laps to go. They're pretty much coming up on the line now. So we're about to start the final lap of the race. And it's going to be pretty interesting here. I think it's all lining itself up for a bit of a fireworks and sparks moment.
Loxton, I'm sorry, just way overshot the heel of the boot, so he's starting to get desperate. He's starting to use up those front tires, but they're going to have only 2 turns to go, and they'll start a final lap. Wayne Burke looks pretty much untroubled out the front there. He's exiting the final turn to take the white flag here at Watkins Glen, but it is on for second. Here we go. Marlon McMullen going a little defensive. He's going to clutch it once again into the braking zone for turn one. Loxton has a little bit of a look, but is not able to get it done. Bit too much oversteer on the exit. So that may ruin whatever run he had coming onto the straight. He is still in draft range though, so we'll have to see what happens here. Marlon McMullen. Yeah, he's
coming, but he just had a little bit of a slide at the top of the hill there, and that might have just been enough.
Big defense.
It was a big defense, and that's what I said. If he knows where to put the car, he's going to be okay. It's the final lap, and Loxton's been looking racy other parts of the track, so it's not out of the question that the move doesn't still get done. He's showing the nose everywhere that he can, but Marlon McMullen has done a great job so far of keeping that car ahead of, I don't think he's actually lost a position other than Wayne Burke. He's only made up positions otherwise, and he's up 7 so far, so he's been doing a great job all race. So just watching Mitchell McLeod go for a bit of a move on Kyle Stokes maybe as they come around the outside. We are keeping an eye on the battle at the front as well, ladies and gentlemen, so if something does happen there, we will let you know. Oh, McLeod! My goodness, that was close. And that will probably kill any run that he has, but the man that started from pole position is starting to make his way towards the finish line, and the two behind him don't look like they're going to be trading places before this.
Marlon, oh my goodness, he's almost out of fuel.
And Wayne Burke will come across the line and win the race, but who's going to come home second and third? It looks like Marlon McMullen's just going to get it there. He's managed to save enough. Just. But that was an amazing race from Marlon McMullen, and Brett Loxton doing a fantastic job as well to work his way up onto the podium. So we see a couple of other drivers. Jamie McKnight caught up all the way up to Jackson Suslan-Harlow, which is fantastic effort. Assuming Jackson, another man who doesn't have as much practice as he would have liked for this race with the other commitments on the weekend, still coming home in a respectable 7th. And lots of other drivers still finishing this race. And that's Dean O'Brien. Oh no, that's Matt Muggleton there. Got past Oguz Durack, Luke Page, and Steve Jansen in the dying stages of that race. And Dean O'Brien will come back around and lost a couple of positions because he had to pit with a couple of laps to go there, and he will pretty much round out the field. But a fantastic race from all of our drivers this evening. Thank you for putting on such a great show. Wayne Burke in the end from One Performance Racing, a fantastic race for him in his new team colours, taking home the win of the Aussie Driver Search iRacing V8 Supercars Series. Round 6 at Watkins Glen. Congratulations to him. Marlon McMullen pulled the strategy hat out of the bag and managed to take home position number 2 after starting from 9th. An amazing effort from him. And Brett Loxton also started from 7th and moved himself onto the podium. Great job there from the KRF Motorsports team in their new looking colours as well. Jack Boyd, great job to keep himself in 4th position. Brett Cananzi had an interesting race to come home in 5th. Mario Vlasic, I feel like that would have to be a personal best for him in a Monday night broadcasted race with 6th position. Great performance from him. Jackson Suslan-Harlow came home in 7th, and Jamie McKnight put on a good fight to come home in 8th. Chris Coxhead up a lot of positions as well, up 9 positions to come home in 9th. Another top 10 for him, very strong. And Kyle Stokes for ERT coming home in 10th position.
Mitchell McLeod almost had Kyle Stokes on the last lap, but he's going to have to settle for 11th in the end. James Scott and Christian Smart worked out their issues. Scott in front of Smart there, with Brian Borg finishing in 14th. Zach Baker making his way up from 21st to 15th. Good run from him. James McKee in 16th place with Justin Wallace. A very quiet one, but he managed to gain quite a few positions out of that one. 17th for him. Corey Preston, one of the big sorrow stories of the race, started in the top 5, but unfortunately that incident with Cananzi put him right out of the running. He'll have to settle for 18th. Matt Muggleton and Oguz Durack rounding out the top 20.
And we had Luke Page coming home in 21st, and Steve Jansen, believe almost, no, we still have a couple more cars on the lead lap. Dean O'Brien and Jamie Stovall were most definitely on the lead lap for that race, but that's unfortunately where the story ends for cars that went without relative trouble. Greg Sharp in the Stealth Simforce car having to pull out a couple laps early. Michael Taliancic, big incident early on in the race, continued on, but with massive damage to that car, having to come home 4 laps down. Raymond Stayer for TD Racing, unfortunately caught up in that massive accident involving Brenton O'Brien, Damien Johnston, and Guy Leach earlier in the race. Sam Blacklock, well, he was taken away in an ambulance with Reese, and they're currently seeking medical attention at the nearest hospital after he had a massive accident involving Brett Loxton earlier in the race. And,
Good thing I took my mic with me, eh?
Yeah, exactly. We are thankful for that race, and we appreciate your commitment to the sport. And Luke Harvey was unfortunately the final runner of this evening's race, 28 laps down after a big incident earlier on. But Reese, we are out for tonight, but not for the week, because there is still plenty of action coming up on the iRacing Esports Network, and also coming up on the SimSpeed TV network as well.
Yeah, certainly. We've got a packed week as per usual here at SimSpeed TV. On the iRacing Esports Network, we're going to have the Geodesic Racing, the Alpine Stars Geodesic Racing Sprint Series Australasia on Wednesday night, and the little prelude to that will be iRacing Official Rallycross, so make sure to tune in on Wednesday night for that. Thursday, we've got the Oceanic Sim Racing Formula 3 Championship. Friday, the Australian Online Supercar Championship on the Esports Network, and next week we've got Monday Night V8 Supercars once again at Donington Park National. That's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, Donington Park is a very tricky circuit, very tight, very difficult to get past as well, and especially coming through those that downhill kind of S's section in a V8 Supercar sounds like an absolute nightmare to me. But these guys all come out and they always put on a fantastic show. So I have absolutely no doubt that it is going to be an absolutely fantastic race. Now, before we leave you this evening, ladies and gentlemen, we would thank you so much for joining us. We would ask if you would be so kind to hit subscribe on the iRacing Esports Network channel, as well. If you could head over to the simspeed.tv or the SimSpeed television network and give us a subscribe as well. And if you want to make sure that you leave a like on this video, it all helps us in the long run, and it helps us grow the sport as well. So we would really appreciate your support in helping us get through that. And also, just on a personal level, as I'm sure a lot of people know, my team had some really good success in the Daytona 24-hour yesterday. And I just wanted to personally thank everyone who's reached out to me with their congratulations and their support. We really appreciate all the support from everyone, and we're looking forward to taking a bit of time off and celebrating, and yeah, it's been a really crazy time. So thank you to everybody, and we will be back next week for the Monday night official iRacing Supercars Championship. Reese, thank you so much for joining me in the booth this evening. And as always, a thank you to Jay Kennedy, who is fiddling around with those TV buttons and bringing you all the beautiful pictures that you have seen this evening. My name is Zach Hanlon. Thank you so much for joining us on the iRacing Esports Network and on SimSpeed TV. And until next time, I hope everyone is well, and we'll see you then.